Hi, my name is Marcus, and I'm here on behalf of Fracture Sounds to show you their latest blueprint instrument, Brass Ensemble. And if you happen to be new here, Blueprint is a series of free instruments compatible with the Kontakt Player that are curated from Fracture Sounds experiments and passion projects. And in this case, we have essentially what is the ensemble patch from majestic brass soloists in a condensed and lightweight form factor. I personally love the full majestic brass library, and I'm very glad that we have this lightweight version as well, so I'm going to show you through the controls and then a piece of music that I've written to demonstrate how it sounds in context. Let's begin. If you're here, you've probably already seen the walkthrough for majestic brass soloists, but if not, the link to that video will be in the description. Personally, I think some of the finest legato Fracture Sounds has ever produced, and really can't wait to be using it in my own work. However, in this version, we have a few articulations taken from the ensemble patch within that library, and we've got it in this lovely lightweight form factor with the mic mix and 3 articulations. Here is the sustain. Staccato using the key switches at the bottom. And then performance shorts, which allows you to switch between the two using velocity rather than having to key switch. And unlike in the full library, you'll actually hear that we're now alternating between staccatos and sustains, rather than staccatos and tenuto. So you might find that quite useful in certain contexts. And again, to reiterate, we have the mic mix found in the full library, which allows you to put these instruments on a really nice, dry, close mic. Let me turn the reverb down actually, so you can hear that again. Yeah, that's splendid. Hello, Baloo. A new toy in action. Now let's hear the mid mic on its own, which I will do by resetting the perspective slider. And you can either move the sliders independently if you want to hear on its own, or you can just hit the solo button here, whichever works fastest for you. And then finally the far mics, which gives you more of the sound of the nave where this was recorded. Nice. I'm going to put the reverb back on and then show you the other controls. Going to stick with sustains for the time being. Here is dynamics, which is controlled by CC1 or your mod wheel. And if you want to control how much this affects the overall volume of the instrument as well as the timbre, you can click on the cogwheels on the left here and move the dynamic range slider. So all the way down, our lowest dynamic and our highest dynamic are audibly going to be the same volume. And all the way up, our lowest volume is going to be actual silence. Kind of like the full library, this gives you a really nice crescendo if you want it. And adding to that, we have a colour control, which is found in nearly every Blueprint library, but this might be one of the times where it's going to be the most helpful because, of course, you can then further emphasise those crescendos and sort of bring that forte up to a fortissimo if you want it. So I'm going to set this to a control on my fader. Here's how it sounds. It's really good. And our next control is stereo width, which, as the name implies, It's like a real surround sound that. Let's do that crescendo one more time. Okay, and then as alluded to earlier, our reverb controls, which have these cogwheels next to them. If you click on them, you have a few types of reverb to choose from. Exactly the same as the full library. We've got hall. Let me turn up the reverb so you can hear the difference a bit more. Room, which is the default. Convolution, with a bunch of options underneath to choose from. And then finally, my personal favourite, shimmer. Gonna put this back onto room. The final control to show you back in the settings page is the sample start slider, which cuts into the start of the sample if you want it to be a little bit more playable. So if I bring this all the way up, it gives us a latency of 0 milliseconds. And on the staccatos, this means it just is way more responsive. Bringing it down gives you the most realistic sound at the cost of ease of playing. But not that much, to be honest with you. And that is the controls for Brass Ensemble. I'm now going to play you a piece of music that I wrote, which demonstrates how it sounds in context, alongside some other free Blueprint instruments. So this piece of music, equipment and computer and software notwithstanding, in terms of VSTs, this was completely free to make. So I hope you enjoy it. One day I'm going to open one of these projects and I'm going to say I'm really displeased with how this turned out. But today is not that day, because I am happy with how this turned out, especially given the fact that I managed to whip this up in about an hour and a half. Don't tell Will. So the big challenge, I think, for ensemble patches like this, and it's the same with the full library, the challenge is getting it to not sound like a synth pad when you have multiple brass instruments playing the same note, kind of like layering in and out of each other. I think it's quite a difficult thing to pull off, and I think these ensemble patches do it really well. Though, of course, it helps to write in a way that kind of brings out the best in them. So I do think, personally, staccato sounds more realistic in this instrument than sustains, depending on what notes you're playing. And I really do like just the little kind of breaths and stuff, the little kind of p sounds that you get from this one. It does sound really good. So I have that arpeggio pattern that kind of like just ever so slightly gets more complicated towards the end, replaced at the end with the sustains, essentially. That's the bulk of the piece. So sticking with the brass for now, and I'm going to go top to bottom because it's loosely following a sort of brass ensemble layout. We've got a trumpet staccato patch. I don't use any key switches in this particular piece. For me, it's faster to just duplicate the track and then change the articulation. It also allowed me to do things like set the colour, stereo width and mic mix on each instrument kind of independently. Pretty much every track has got a different setup where that's concerned. In this case, you can see it's close mic'd. You can hear that shimmer reverb echoing on, and wherever possible with all of the Blueprint instruments in this piece, I went into the settings, made it shimmer, brought the size down, and that stopped it from being too kind of reverberant. And for the Blueprint instruments that actually predate the shimmer reverb, I put them on Hall and then just cranked the size right up to kind of match that basically. So all the reverb in this piece is fracture sound. The arpeggio loop is on mid mics with the colour cranked up ever so slightly. Really sort of nice warm sound that. And then here we have an unusually tense section for me where we have these slight discordant sounds. Ooh, not really that discordant, but there is an interval of a second there in trumpets, which you don't hear very often from me. Using the dynamics control, as you can see, to sort of bring it out when the chords come in, and the colour turned all the way up for this one. Oh, I should also mention as well, every single instrument, sample start all the way down to 100 milliseconds, and like with the full libraries, I always go over to the track delay and set it to negative 100 milliseconds. I've started doing that the past few months, and it's changed my life. So I highly recommend doing that. You can see everything in this piece is just quantized to the grid. There's no faffing around, like moving things ahead of the beat just to get it just right. It says 100 milliseconds. It's 100 milliseconds. I cannot express enough how much time it saves you with just playing things in. You turn the sample start up, play it in, and then turn it down. And to make it even easier, I actually learn a MIDI CC on my fader box so that if I want to record something in, I can go like this, hit record, play something really quickly, and then once I've hit space again, I'll just bring it down. I try not to hit record and then move it, mind, because obviously you then get that movement recorded, which you don't want. If you want to see more details about how all of that kind of engine works, am I going to have to take that off of you? If you want to see more details about how that all works, there is a video by Will Bedford, which I expect is linked below. As mentioned, we've got close mics, colour turned all the way up for this. Now for my favourite track of this project, and that is the big sustains, stereo width cranked up. I think I did play around with the mic mix. You can see it's not quite perfectly centred. I think the default was just the best in the end. And as you can see here, using the dynamic slider to really kind of swell these in and out. Wouldn't be my first instinct to like do a lot of dynamic swelling here, but when I did it, I was like, that's the missing ingredient. If you're not sort of doing that all the time by default, maybe try it out. Next track, and this is the one where I've used a bit of EQ, and this is the only time in the project you'll see this. You can see it's a little extreme. This is bringing out the really top end of the brass, making it super bright and buzzy, and also, because this is of course being applied on the VST, which already has shimmer coming out of it, it's making the shimmer reverb ultra bright as well. Like, we don't have atmosphere layers in this, but this basically was my way of making an atmosphere track. Yeah, nice. And then our final brass ensemble track. Okay, I may have lied. I forgot I added a bit of extra bass to this. A little bit cheeky. I always try to avoid using EQ where I can. However, I did try to accentuate the bass in-house by bringing the colour down and then the volume up. So we're kind of getting less treble, more bass. And because the focus is on this one instrument, I think that is why I sort of brought the stereo width down. Whatever I chose to do, I think the tuba in this library sounds fantastic. You can hear like a little bit of trombone coming in on that top note, but one thing that I really like about the low instruments is that if you have a library like this as an ensemble, of course, none of the other instruments can get that low. So for a few notes down at the bottom, you have a solo tuba if you need it. And I think this basically self-explanatory, plays the same kind of thing throughout. Let me just play the last section of the brass on its own. that dynamics control really doing wonders here on the sustain patch. Moving on now, I'm going to quickly breeze you through the other instruments because of course you'll have heard other stuff going on here. Toy piano, just the tiniest little bit of texture on the offbeat, giving us a kind of like supplemented rhythm. And then the rest of this piece is all string section, which mostly consists of a lot of plucking. We've got string trio doing pizzicato, textural violin and textural viola doing col legno. These three together make this pleasant texture. Note the delay on the violin. And then this transitions to a slightly more serious use of short strings playing staccato. And matching the vibe of the piece as well, you can hear that I've gone close mic and the colour control turned up a little bit. But my favourite part of the string section has to be, of course, the sustained string trio, which is just doubling what the brass are playing and again really accentuating the swells in and out, because with this, of course, we have way more treble than in the brass. So here's how it sounds on its own. Got that delightful kind of air to it, especially because it's on close mic'd, I think. But then you put it with the brass, and I think this is just a little bit of a magical sound. And then, coinciding with the re-entry of our tuba, the bass is further accentuated with gentle strings. And gentle strings is a string ensemble that only goes down to the cello. There's no basses. So, to get a bass sound, I have pitch shifted this library down by 12 semitones. And I think this is the only instance of the piece where I actually had the tightness turned up rather than down. So the tightness is basically a sort of mirror image of the sample start control. All the way up is cutting into the samples, all the way down is like full uncut sample. But when you pitch shift something down, it makes any kind of gap at the start twice as long. So as a result, I cut into that to make it nice and sort of not snappy, but fast enough basically. Here's how they sound on their own. Yeah, not gonna lie, not particularly convincing. However, let's have a listen to it now with the tuba. Still not amazing, but good enough, I think. So, let's now hear all of the strings together, just so we can hear how they sound without the brass. And just for good measure, let's hear the outro one more time in full. And there we go. That was Brass Ensemble. As I said, a really lovely little lightweight version of the ensemble patch found within Majestic Brass Soloists, allowing you to get a little taste test of how that library sounds if you want to use it in your own work. And if you do, completely free to download, so do feel free to head to the Fracture Sounds website, linked below, in order to pick up a copy. Otherwise, consider subscribing to this YouTube channel so you don't miss any more lovely free instruments in the future. And I will see you when I see you. Goodbye.